Welcome to this special edition of IT Matters Takeaways. You'll hear intriguing discussions such as your privacy. Who owns the data about you anyway? And are we really ready for big data? Gartner says no, but recommends we grow our own experts. Meet the data scientist or chief data officer of the future. They will not be the traditional computer scientist or engineer. They're part librarian, sociologist, and computer scientist. And what's the question that every IT org must answer? Enabler or impediment? Stick around and learn even more.
Okay. All right, I think we're good. As I had briefly mentioned, I would really like this more to be a conversation as opposed to a presentation. I can certainly do it as a presentation, but if we make this more interactive, just ask questions, challenge me, challenge where some of my conclusions come from and where I think some of the things that the impacts to government IT of these various trends are. So again, thanks for inviting me. And again, let's make it a conversation more than a presentation. Let's see. This is the Nexus of Forces. Gartner has coined this phrase to represent the aggregation or the coming together of those four forces: social, mobile, cloud. And cloud is not just cloud computing, but really virtualization across the entire IT infrastructure. Software-defined networks, virtualized data centers, cloud computing, cloud storage, and information, big data, if you will. The combined impact of those, Gartner sees as really being greater than the sum of the parts. It's that the intermix of those four forces are driving us to a capability and a set of challenges, risks that are greater than what would come out of each individual component if just looked at separately. So we call this the Nexus of Forces. The backdrop of that is the consumerization of IT. We all are experiencing it. We all see it in a daily basis in our home environments as well as our work environments. The expectations of people and what IT can bring and should bring to the table have changed because of consumerization of IT. You know, the consumerization of IT has really changed the foundational expectations of much of our workforce. There were four presentations that talked about trends in industry, trends in IT, trends in strategic trends in business. I took the four of those and created this assessment. I had an opportunity to sit through and listen to those in rapid succession, and was struck by the overlap and the aggregation of what some of those impacts were. And clearly, as you can tell by the spider chart, that information and mobility are where a large percentage of the impact, as Gartner has identified these sets of trends, are going to be. Information and big data is clearly the emerging focus for IT professionals. It's going to be the replacement for infrastructure operations. Mobility is a fact. It's not an option. It's a part of what the enterprise environment is going to include. Cloud is a virtualization on all levels. But really think of cloud as more the abstraction away of the infrastructure from what most of us are going to have to worry about. These are the 6 areas that I see most of the impacts to government from the various sets of trends and predictions that Gartner has made. Thank you. Question was, is security involved in these 6 areas? And security is a part of cyber. So when I talk about cyber, again, given my defense kind of background, cyber includes 3 primary areas. It includes computer network defense, what we would commonly, historically review as IT security, computer network attack. Not a lot of organizations get too involved in computer network attack. Computer network exploit, which is reconnaissance, and it is historically not been a big area for non-defense or intelligence organizations. But even in the commercial environment, we're finding that an active defense involves exploration and reconnaissance outside of your own IT environment. That is generally what is known as computer network exploit. CNE includes that activity of going out and looking across the environment and seeing what is happening. And in some cases, even putting things like honeypots and that to as a part of your active defense, if you will. So that's all in cyber. So that includes, like I said, the historic aspects of IT security. What do I mean by a honeypot? A honeypot is a site that is set up to attract hackers who think that it is a real location, and you can literally attract them and trap them. Yes. Yes, catching, and even if you don't stop them, you identify them and can then add them to either a blacklist or a whitelist, depending on what your network defense structure is. Information. As I said, information is the dominant theme of going forward. From an IT point of view, I really want to talk about a couple of things. One, the storage explosion that is happening and the implications that it's going to have, not from an infrastructure point of view, but on how we do business. When you now have terabytes and terabytes of data that is all subject to FOIA, to include your desktop PST files, to include Twitter accounts, to include other social media accounts, you are obligated to search and provide that information under a FOIA request. It is a scale issue that most of our systems are not prepared to respond to. Information. Combination of operational technology, video technology, cameras on every corner, coupled with the massive amount of structured and unstructured data that comes through our systems on a daily basis, gives us the ability to see things and see trends that we probably wouldn't have. But it presents a very serious operational security issue. It's the essence of total loss of privacy. And that has implications for organizations like NASA and defense organizations. The Internet of Things, with the number of connected devices exceeding the number of people in the world by a couple orders of magnitude, has implications on your sense of what is private, your sense of privacy, your sense of anonymity. And that has both corporate and personal implications. If you had a chemical incident on a NASA location might be really useful to know where everybody is. So there's good parts to this, but there's the flip side of the bad part too. So massive information and big data changes some of our expectations. The comment was that there's the relationship of number of connected devices to people in the world of roughly 100 to 1. That is where we see this being within the next 2 to 3 years. The number of machine to machine, and it may be even in one of the specific predictions in the back of this, but we're looking at somewhere to 40 to 50 billion connected devices right now, counting all the operational technology, all the cell phones, all the refrigerators that have a computer chip connected to the internet, all the home heating. You see these little Next heating things that are connected to the internet? Yeah, there's toasters connected to the internet now. It is the number of devices connected to the internet has exploded beyond anything that I would have thought of. How many, and all those devices carry certain information. And it is unrealistic to expect that you're the only one that has access to that information, even coming out of your device. The couple of points that I really want to bring up on this slide, one that bothered me the most from a computer defense point of view is the wearable and implanted devices. It is becoming somewhat normal, I've been told, for pacemakers to be connected to the internet and provide ongoing status of your heart situation to your doctor. The military for a while has been exploring the idea of having your computer built into your clothing. But they were using the technologies of actually embedding wires in it. Under some of the new emerging technologies on printable electronics, you actually just print the electronics right in the fabric. Wear your computer on your clothes. How do you know what is secure and what isn't? All of the security processes that I have either written or reviewed, I've never dealt with implanted electronics. And I would suspect most organizations in the government have not dealt with it either. Of the 1 million jobs that we see being created in big data over the next 2 years, only 1/3 of them are going to get filled. The skill sets are not there. The talent is not there to leverage big data. From a government perspective, we know that when there's an extreme shortage of skilled people, we have historically had a very difficult time attracting and retaining those skill sets in the government. The inability to attract them means that we probably are going to have to grow our own. The inability to retain them means that we're going to have a continual training process, kind of a revolving recruiting and training process. The skill sets involved with data analytics, data scientists, they're not the traditional computer scientist or engineer background. They may be more of a soft science, a sociology background, a librarian background, a background that is used to looking at and understanding remote concepts or remote linkages of what seemingly disparate facts. or disparate threads. Question is, are the universities picking up on this trend, and are they making the adjustments necessary in their course curriculum to produce the kind of data analytics? Right now, we are not seeing them picking up on that quickly. University and traditional higher education facilities tend to mirror, unfortunately, the government in their inability to rapidly change. Course curriculum are things that, for certification processes and all that, they don't change on a dime. And what we are seeing is that kind of continued, this is the way we do business. We are seeing some research notes coming out of the research universities that recognize that this is starting to be different, which would lead me to believe that, yes, they will eventually get there. I would not look for it anytime soon. So anytime soon meaning like 5-7 years. Does Gartner see government institutions who have this need partnering with universities to make that change more quickly? I think that's going to be one of the approaches into the grow your own. It'll be more if an agency or organization has a relationship with a university or set of universities, that they're going to go, I got to grow my own. Can you help me here? So it'll be more a hit or miss. And leveraging existing relationships, I think, is going to be the key element there. And I would assume that NASA has relationships with some universities that they could potentially look at doing that. So the question is, what is qualitatively different between a big data analytics and kind of the data analysis that we have historically done, especially in NASA, where you've dealt with large volumes of data for a very long time? A large part of the big data analytics is in unstructured data. A large part of data analytics, big data, involves data you don't own. The analysis of data that is external to you, either from social media, from which is really one of the bigger sources right now, from the aggregated traffic data that comes from external sources, video streaming data from external sources, and then the unstructured piece. Yeah, is this like pattern recognition? And a large part of it is pattern recognition, and some of the concepts of the semantic web. If you remember, I'm going to go back probably 6-7 years. There was a fairly robust set of research done on the semantic web and the contextualization of data. The classic within the defense community is, what is a tank? Well, a tank can either be something that holds fluids, or it can be a very large, heavy, nasty, armored vehicle. So it's the context, the other words around it, that led you to believe whether we are talking about a water container or an armored vehicle. So it's some pattern recognition, but it is contextualization, the contextual recognition of the data and putting that into the overall analysis. Sentiment analysis is another term that is quite often used in the analytics of social media. What are people thinking? What are the sentiments that are being expressed? And that isn't a clear word or phrase, but it's the context in which something is being said. But it's the analytics of rapidly changing multiple sourced data. It's a pressure points that can be brought to individuals if you start to think about the application of big data analytics in the nefarious hand is a little scary. It's that role of IT will change in the organization. And the question is it going to be an enabler or an impediment? That is the question every IT organization has to answer. Is it going to just say no to any new idea? In which case it will become an impediment and it will be bypassed because those new ideas are going to happen. The rise of information management and the manipulation, as we talked about, is really the future of where IT organizations, CIO organizations, it's the Chief Information Office, not the Chief Infrastructure Office. Talk about a competitive advantage in public sector organizations. It's providing the services that we provide in a new, better way, maybe even new sets of services to our constituents. And the last one is in this world of Internet of Things, we need to move beyond a risk avoidance to a risk management environment.
This is a question regarding the title of your talk. The title says predictions and impact on the government. So what were Gartner's predictions in this area, and what are the impacts?
All right, so we've talked through some of the impacts. The predictions are in the exact predictions, the details. Here are the 10 predictions, the emerging trends, the technology trends, and the 10 critical trends in technologies. These were the source data that I used for the impacts.
I'm bothered by the fact that throughout your talk, as I sat here, I was losing more and more of my personal freedoms by all of this information being gathered about me. So there are huge legal implications and issues with all this crowdsourcing and using all this information about you, and so it's going to be a huge set of laws that have to be set up. So for example, if you, the idea about having a heart implant, and if you look at some of the science fictions, well, someone wirelessly could actually reverse the signal, and actually you could be killed by that through no fault of your own, just as an example. And so the question comes, and I was at a creativity and inclusion class at NASA, and we were discussing the fact that when you're born, we might be getting into the chip age, as we do with my 2 German Shepherds. Each have a chip, so I know where they are. But I really think that the civil liberties has to be involved before we all embrace what you were talking about. My other comment is our houses are already attached to the internet because the power sources, et cetera, and if you have solar energy, it goes out to the internet. So you're being monitored every which way from last Monday. So, but the disturbing part is my freedoms that we fought in this country so much for.
Our current laws do not come anywhere close. Who owns the data about me? That seems to be such a fundamental question that I should have, if it's about me, I should have some right to that data. That is not true today. That is absolutely not true today. And that concept of what is me, what I get to control, what I get to have, even just visibility of, has not caught up in our current legal system. Totally with you. It just bothers the heck out of me. And
you mentioned the shortages of skilled IT graduates, et cetera. Can you delineate what you think the skills really are, or how that's commonly broken out these days? What IT skills are we talking about?
It's the data analytics skills. It's the what we kind of call the information management, information analytics. Gartner's as loosely titled that the data scientist, and we've even postulated that many organizations will come up with a new position called the chief data officer or chief digital officer for the organization. So you take some of the skills of a librarian, which is knowing where information is. You take some of the skills of a social scientist, a sociologist in particular. How do people assimilate or incorporate information? And you take some of the skills of a computer scientist. How do I represent and compare and contrast data? So it's that somewhat ill-defined combination of those skill sets. It's how do you think about things? How do you approach problem solving? And how well can you articulate your answers? And so it was that combination that was very hard to describe. And I see that as I've read the various descriptions of what this skill set is, I see that.
What's the likelihood that the more nimble public sector would hire people whose background may be social science, but they get some data science skills by virtue of these online courses, which are now reaching hundreds of thousands of people, and basically obviate the need for even a degree from an institution?
Well, the official Gartner view is there's going to be a lot of paths to create these people. What we recommend, though, is that you start a small project around data information, data analytics. Some people in there and see who likes it, who excels in that environment. And that's how you start to pick and start to grow your internal staff. And I know that you're probably laughing going, yeah, I can see that happening in a government organization. But I was fortunate enough to actually be able to do that on a different kind of a project about 8 years ago, right after 9/11. And it is doable. So that's all I can say. It is doable, but it's not probably common.
IT Matters Takeaways videos are brief communiques about IT-related issues that impact Goddard. For more in-depth interactive IT presentations, watch for announcements on our website or on Dateline. Find the IT Matters site on itcd.gsfc.nasa.gov or scan this QR code.